The last thing my father built was a birdhouse. I found it in his workshop 3 days after his funeral, sitting on the bench beside blueprints for projects he'd never complete. Cedar wood, copper roof, dovetail joints so perfect you couldn't see the seams. He'd carved our family name into the base, Chen and Son Construction, established 1987. The company had been dead for 6 months by then, bankrupted by a contract that promised everything and delivered nothing. VistaCorp's signature on paper that turned out to be worthless. My father spent his last days trying to understand how he'd been so completely destroyed. I kept the birdhouse, sold everything else. 7 years later, I stood across the street from the Orpheum Theatre at dawn with a demolition permit in my pocket and VistaCorp's money in my bank account. Blood money, maybe, but money all the same. The building looked like it was dying slowly. 6 stories of brick and terracotta, built in 1924, when architecture meant something. Now the marquee hung crooked, windows shattered, the whole structure leaning east, like it had given up on standing straight. Saturday morning at 6 a.m., I'd reduce it to rubble in 17 seconds. Demo number 44, just another job. Except VistaCorp was paying double my usual rate. And my boss, Frank, had made a strange comment when he handed me the contract. They specifically requested you, Marcus. Wouldn't say why. I didn't ask questions, I just took the money. My phone buzzed. Text from Frank. Check your email. Problem. I opened my email. 23 new messages. Top one from VistaCorp Legal. Orpheum Demolition. Temporary hold. Historical review. Petition granted. 30-day delay. Emergency preservation assessment. Effective immediately. I was still reading when she appeared. She came around the corner, carrying camera equipment that probably cost more than my truck, moving like she owned the sidewalk. Canvas work pants, steel-toed boots, jacket covered in pins and patches. Her hair was dark, pulled back in a bun that was already falling apart. She walked straight to the Orpheum's entrance and pulled out a key. "Building's condemned," I called out. "You can't go in there." She looked up. Her eyes were green, sharp as broken glass. "Dr. Natalie Brennan, Architectural Preservation." She held up an official document. "I have authorization for a 30-day historical survey. And you must be Marcus Chen, the demolition expert who's been specifically requested for this project." Something in the way she said "specifically requested" made my skin crawl. "You filed the preservation petition," I said. "Yesterday. Emergency basis. The Historical Coalition has evidence this building qualifies for landmark status." She studied my face. "VistaCorp didn't tell you about me, did they?" "No." "Interesting." She unlocked the door. "They told me all about you, Chen Son Construction, your father's bankruptcy, the VistaCorp contract that destroyed his company." She pushed the door open. "Tell me, Mr. Chen, do you know why they hired you specifically to demolish this building?" Ice water ran down my spine. "What are you talking about?" "Come inside, I'll show you something." Every instinct told me to walk away, call Frank, get lawyers involved. Instead, I followed her into the building my father had died because of. The lobby hit me like a fist to the chest. Not because it was destroyed, though it was. Ceiling collapsed in 2 places. Water damage running down walls like tears. Carpet rotted through to concrete. But because I recognized it, I'd seen this lobby before. In my father's workshop. In the blueprints scattered across his desk the day he died. "You see it," Natalie said quietly. She was watching my face. "Your father was the original contractor for the Orpheum Restoration Project, 2017. VistaCorp hired Chen and Son to restore this building to landmark condition. Then they pulled funding halfway through, and claimed breach of contract when your father couldn't complete the work. My hands were shaking. That's not possible. It's documented. She pulled out a folder, handed it to me. Original contract, payment schedules, the emails where VistaCorp systematically destroyed your father's company by demanding impossible timelines, withholding payments, then suing for non-completion. I read the documents with vision going blurry at the edges. Every page was a knife wound. Every email was proof that my father hadn't failed. He'd been sabotaged. Why? My voice came out raw. Why would they do this? Because they wanted the land, not the building. Restoration was always a lie. They needed your father to fail so they could claim the building was beyond saving, condemn it, and demolish for luxury condos. She took the folder back. They've done it 3 times in this city. Historic buildings, small contractors, same pattern, sabotage and destroy. And they hired me to finish the job. The realization was bitter as poison. To demolish what my father died trying to save. Yes? She looked at me with something that might have been sympathy. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. But you deserve to know who you're working for. I walked to the center of the lobby, stood where my father must have stood 7 years ago, looking at this same destruction, trying to figure out how to save it. The 30-day hold, I said. You're trying to stop the demolition. I'm trying to save what your father started. Natalie came to stand beside me. This building is culturally significant. It was a colored theater during segregation. Duke Ellington, Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, they all performed here. The ceiling in the main auditorium has original artwork. The archive has documents worth preserving. If I can prove historical value, we can block VistaCorp permanently. They'll fight you. They have lawyers, money, political connections. I know, but I have 30 days to build a case they can't ignore. She turned to face me. And I'm hoping you'll help me. Why would I help you? Because they killed your father. Because they're using you to destroy his legacy. Because... She stopped. Because I think you're tired of tearing things down. She was right. God help me, she was right. If I help you, I said slowly, I lose the contract. VistaCorp will sue me for breach. I'll lose everything. Yes, and if we fail, the building comes down anyway and I'll have lost everything for nothing. Yes. I looked at the lobby. At the Art Deco tile my father had probably walked on. At the water damage he'd tried to fix. At the bones of something beautiful, dying because evil men wanted money more than history. Show me what you've got, I said. We worked in silence for the first 2 days. Not uncomfortable, just careful. 2 people circling each other, trying to figure out if we were allies or just temporarily aligned enemies. Natalie documented everything. She moved through the building like a detective, photographing water damage patterns, measuring crack progression, taking samples of materials for dating analysis. She was methodical, precise, missing nothing. I did what I always did. Read the structure, found the weak points. The places that would kill you if you weren't careful. Southwest corner's a death trap, I said on day 2. We were in the basement, Natalie sorting through boxes of moldy documents. Foundations compromised, water intrusion for years. That wall could collapse if you lean on it wrong. Can it be fixed? Anything can be fixed if you throw enough money at it. I tested the wall with careful pressure. Underpinning, waterproofing, structural reinforcement, $600,000 minimum. Add it to the list. She didn't look up from the documents. Everything's fixable. The question is whether anyone will pay to fix it. You really think you can win this? I think I have to try. She pulled out a program, plastic wrapped and remarkably preserved. Duke Ellington Orchestra, September 1943. Original signatures. Do you know what this is worth to historians? To the Black community, whose history gets erased every time someone decides a building isn't worth saving. I took the program carefully. The signatures looked real. The paper was yellowed but intact. My father would have saved this, I said quietly, if they'd let him. I know. Natalie's voice was soft. That's why I need your help. You know what he was trying to do. You can help me finish it. Or I can help VistaCorp tear it down and take their money. You won't. She looked at me with those sharp green eyes. Because you're not the kind of man who destroys his father's legacy for revenge. You don't know what kind of man I am, don't I? She stood, brushed dust off her pants. You've been here 2 days. You could have left any time. Called your boss, walked away, let me work alone. But you're still here, helping me stabilize shelves, warning me about unsafe floors, holding my lights while I photograph. She stepped closer. You're here because you care. You just don't want to admit it yet. She was too close. I could smell her shampoo, something clean. Cedar, maybe. Could see the dust in her hair, the smudge of dirt on her cheek. I'm here because I want to know what my father saw, I said. That's all? Liar. She walked past me, back to her documents. But I saw the small smile on her face. And I realized she was right. Day 7, I found it. I was in the old office wing, checking structural integrity of the upper floors. Most of the rooms were empty, stripped of anything valuable decades ago. But one office at the end of the hall still had a desk, filing cabinets, papers scattered across the floor. The name on the door, Chen Son Construction, Project Office. My father's office from 2017. Still here, still abandoned, like the building had preserved his ghost. I stood in the doorway for a long time before I could make myself go in. The papers on the floor were work orders, supply receipts, schedule updates. I recognized my father's handwriting on the margins. Notes about materials, concerns about timeline, questions about payments that were late. In the desk drawer, I found his personal ledger, the one where he tracked real costs versus what VistaCorp was paying. Every page was evidence of the sabotage. Materials ordered but payments delayed. Timeline demands that required 3 crews, but funding for 1. Change orders that added work without adding budget. My father had documented his own destruction. At the bottom of the drawer, wrapped in plastic, I found a photograph. It was my father standing in the main auditorium looking up at something. His expression was awe, pure, unguarded wonder. I turned the photo over. On the back, in his handwriting, James Chen's Ceiling, 1924. My grandfather's masterpiece. Must save this. James Chen, my great-grandfather. Marcus? I turned. Natalie stood in the doorway with concern written across her face. Are you okay? My great-grandfather painted the ceiling mural, I said. My voice sounded hollow. That's why my father took this contract. He wasn't just restoring a building, he was trying to save family history. Natalie came into the room, looked at the photograph in my hands. I've been trying to identify the artist for a week. The records were lost. She looked at me. You're the artist's descendant. Apparently. I set down the photo carefully. VistaCorp knew. They had to know. That's why they specifically requested me for the demolition. They wanted me to destroy what my father and great-grandfather both tried to save. It's not just about the building. It's about breaking our family completely. Marcus, do you know what the worst part is? I looked at her. I almost did it. I almost took their money and brought this place down without ever knowing what it meant. Natalie picked up the photograph, studied it carefully. But you didn't. You're here. And now you know. She handed me the photo. So what are you going to do about it? What was I going to do? VistaCorp had destroyed my father. They'd tried to destroy our family legacy. They'd paid me to finish the job without telling me what I was really destroying. I could walk away, take the moral high ground, refuse the contract, let someone else demolish the building. Safe choice, clean hands. Or I could fight, help Natalie save the Orpheum, expose VistaCorp's pattern of sabotage, maybe even get justice for my father. But fighting meant losing everything: the contract money, my company's reputation, possibly my entire career. I looked at the photograph of my father, staring up at his grandfather's art with wonder on his face. Some things were worth losing everything for. I'm going to help you win, I said. We had 23 days left. I called Frank that night, told him I was withdrawing from the VistaCorp contract. Conflict of interest. They'll sue us, Frank said. Breach of contract. We could lose the company. I know. I'll take full responsibility. This is on me, not Titan Demolition. Marcus, my father tried to save this building. VistaCorp destroyed him for it. I'm not finishing their work. I paused. I'm sorry, Frank, but I can't do this. Silence on the line. Then, your father was a good man. He deserved better. Another pause. Do what you need to do. I'll handle the lawyers. He hung up. I sat in my truck outside the Orpheum for an hour, wondering if I'd just destroyed my life for a building that might come down anyway. Then Natalie tapped on my window. I rolled it down. She handed me coffee, still hot. Frank called me, she said, told me what you did. It was the right thing to do. It was the brave thing to do. She leaned against my truck. But we're not out of danger. VistaCorp will fight back. They'll discredit my research, question my credentials, find ways to delay and obstruct. And now they know you're working against them. So we'd better make sure we win. She smiled. We'll need more than just historical documentation. We need proof of VistaCorp's sabotage pattern, evidence they deliberately destroyed your father's company and others. If we can show criminal intent, we can block them permanently. How do we prove that? Your father's files, the ones in his office upstairs, that's evidence. We also need to find the other contractors they sabotaged, get their stories documented. She pulled out her tablet. I've been researching. VistaCorp has demolished 4 historic buildings in the last decade. Each time, they hired a small local contractor, sabotaged the restoration, then demolished. We're not the first victims, but we could be the last if we stop them. That's going to take more than 23 days. Then we'd better work fast. She was right. We worked 18-hour days. Natalie documented the building's historical significance while I built the sabotage case. We interviewed former contractors, collected documents, traced the pattern of destruction across 4 projects and 10 years. And somewhere in the long nights surrounded by evidence and dust and dying buildings, something shifted between us. It wasn't sudden. It was slow, inevitable, like water wearing down stone. It was the way she brought me coffee without asking how I took it, but always got it right. It was the way I stabilized shelving before she asked, anticipating where she'd need to go next. It was day 12 when I found her crying in the projection booth, overwhelmed by the weight of stories she was trying to preserve. I sat beside her without speaking, just present. My grandfather died in a nursing home that smelled like disinfectant and despair, she said finally. The last 6 months, he had dementia. Didn't recognize my grandmother, didn't remember his children, but he remembered this theater. He'd tell me about the night he met my grandmother, the music, the lights, how the seats felt like clouds. She wiped her eyes. I'm not just saving a building, Marcus. I'm saving proof that his life mattered. It did matter, I said, and we're going to prove it. She looked at me. Really looked. Why are you doing this? You've already lost the contract. You don't owe me anything. Because my father died thinking he'd failed, thinking he wasn't good enough to save this place. I picked up a dusty film reel, turned it over in my hands. If we win, his death meant something. If we lose, at least I tried to finish what he started. You're a better man than you think you are, Natalie said quietly. I'm just tired of destroying things. She leaned her head on my shoulder. We sat in the projection booth surrounded by film reels and old equipment and the ghosts of every story this building had held. And I realized I wasn't just fighting for the building anymore. I was fighting for her. Day 18, VistaCorp struck back. The motion arrived by courier. Emergency petition for immediate demolition. Imminent structural failure. They'd hired their own structural engineer. Filed a report claiming the building could collapse any day. Requested an emergency hearing to override the historical hold. Hearing scheduled for tomorrow, 9 a.m. They're panicking, Natalie said. We were in the basement, surrounded by documents. We're getting too close to something they don't want exposed, or the building really is about to collapse and we're in denial. Marcus, the crack was loud as a gunshot. I looked up. A section of ceiling near the water main had separated from the joists. It hung at an angle, swaying. Move, I said. Now. I grabbed Natalie and pulled her toward the stairs. We made it to the ground floor as the section fell. The crash echoed through the building. Dust exploded upward like smoke. We stood in the lobby breathing hard. Natalie's hands were shaking. You okay? I asked. Yes. She looked at the basement door. The documents. We got what we needed. The rest isn't worth dying for. Everything in this building is worth something. Not worth your life. I didn't let go of her arm. Natalie, listen to me. If this building comes down, I need you to promise me you won't be inside when it happens. I'm not giving up. I'm not asking you to give up. I'm asking you to stay alive. I pulled her closer. Please. She looked at me with those green eyes that saw through walls and defenses and every lie I'd ever told myself. Only if you promise the same thing, she said. Deal. We stood there in the lobby holding each other while dust settled around us. And I realized that somewhere in the past 18 days, this had stopped being about buildings or fathers or revenge. It had become about us. The hearing was brutal. VistaCorp's lawyers came armed with structural reports, engineering testimony, photographs of collapse damage. They painted the Orpheum as a death trap, a liability, a building that should have been demolished years ago. Then it was our turn. Natalie presented her historical research, programs from legendary performers, photographs documenting the Orpheum as a hub of Black cultural life during segregation, testimony from community members about what the building meant. Then she presented my great-grandfather's artwork, the ceiling mural, the documentation proving James Chen was the artist. The artist's great-grandson is in this room, Natalie said, looking at me. Marcus Chen. And his father died trying to save this building because he knew what it meant to his family and this community. Then I presented the sabotage evidence. 4 contractors, 4 historic buildings, same pattern every time. Hire small companies, sabotage restoration, demolish for profit. I showed the emails, the payment records, the contracts that promised funding but delivered destruction. VistaCorp has systematically destroyed historic buildings and the people who tried to save them, I said. My father was one of their victims. I was supposed to be their tool. But I'm here to make sure they don't win. The room was silent. VistaCorp's lead lawyer stood. Your Honor, this is conspiracy theory. This is documented evidence, the judge said coldly. She'd been reading the files while I presented. And it's disturbing. She looked at VistaCorp's legal team. I'm denying your emergency petition. The preservation hold stands. Furthermore, I'm ordering an investigation into VistaCorp's business practices. She banged her gavel. This company will not demolish another historic building in this city until that investigation concludes. Adjourned. The room erupted. VistaCorp's lawyers looked murderous. The Preservation Coalition cheered. Natalie grabbed my hand and squeezed so hard it hurt. We'd won. But winning came with a price. VistaCorp sued me personally for breach of contract, sued Titan Demolition, filed complaints with the contractors board. They came after me with everything they had. I lost the demolition company, lost my savings fighting the lawsuits, lost almost everything. But the Orpheum got landmark status. Restoration funding came through from the city, the state, private donors who believed in second chances. And I got something I didn't expect. Natalie hired me as the restoration project manager. Same building my father tried to save. Same ceiling my great-grandfather painted. But this time I was building instead of destroying. We worked side by side for 8 months. Long days covered in plaster dust and paint fumes, and the satisfaction of watching something broken become whole. Somewhere around month 3, she started staying at my apartment instead of her hotel. Somewhere around month 5, I stopped calling it my apartment and started saying home. The Orpheum reopened on a Saturday in October. Gala event, full house, string quartet in the restored lobby. The ceiling mural glowed like the stars my great-grandfather had painted were finally real. Natalie's daughter Chloe was there, 8 years old with her mother's green eyes and fearless energy. She stood in the main auditorium looking up at the ceiling and said, "Is that the one great-great-grandpa painted?" "Yes," Natalie said, smiling at me. "Marcus's great-grandfather made that. It's beautiful." Chloe grabbed my hand. "Are you going to marry my mom?" "Chloe," Natalie's face went red. "What? You said he makes you happy. And he saved Grandpa's theater. That means he's family, right?" I looked at Natalie. She looked at me. We both started laughing. "Yes," I said, pulling Natalie close. "That means I'm family." Later that night, after the crowd left and the lights dimmed, Natalie and I stood in the empty auditorium under the ceiling my great-grandfather painted. "I spent 7 years destroying things," I said, "because I was angry. Because I thought if I couldn't build, at least I could control how things fell apart. And now? Now I know that some things are worth saving even when it costs you everything." I turned to face her. "You taught me that. You made me remember why my father loved building, why my great-grandfather painted stars on ceilings, why any of it matters. You saved yourself, Marcus. I just gave you a reason to try. You were the reason." I kissed her under the painted sky full of stars that had survived 96 years of neglect and nearly been destroyed. But they were still here, still glowing, still proof that beauty can last if someone fights for it. The Orpheum still stands. My great-grandfather's art is preserved. My father's legacy is honored. And I finally learned that the strongest structures aren't the ones that never break. They're the ones that get rebuilt by people who refuse to let them fall. We don't always get to choose what we inherit, but we can choose what we do with it. I chose to build. I really want to know, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments. This story has reached readers on every continent.